Okay, let me ask you something. What would you do if pirates kidnapped you? No, seriously, think about it for a second. You're on a boat, captured, life on the line. What's the plan? Well, believe it or not, this exact thing happened to one of the most famous figures in all of history, a young Julius Caesar. And his reaction, it was, well, it's probably not what you're thinking.
He laughed. I mean, literally laughed right in their faces. So the pirates demand this ransom, right? 20 talents of silver. And Caesar, he was actually insulted by how low it was.
He basically told them, "You've got to be kidding me. I'm worth way more than that." Get this, he wasn't acting like a captive at all. In his own mind, he was already the one in charge.
And that right there tells you so much about the man we're talking about today, Julius Caesar. The guy who went from a noble family with no money to an absolute legend, all by breaking every single rule in the book.
So let's rewind a bit and go back to those pirates. Because this one story, it tells you basically everything you need to know about who Caesar really was.
The audacity is just wow. While he's technically their prisoner, he's bossing them around. He's writing speeches and poetry and then telling them to keep it down so he can get some sleep.
And then he makes them a promise. He looks them dead in the eye and says, "Hey, just so you know, when I get out of here, I'm coming back to hunt every last one of you down and crucify you." And the pirates, they just laughed. They thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, he wasn't joking. The second his ransom was paid, he got a fleet together, tracked those pirates down, and did exactly what he promised. That, in a nutshell, was Caesar. Incredibly ambitious, totally ruthless, and a man of his word.
So, the big question is, how does a guy like that climb his way to the absolute top of the Roman world?
Well, he started with a noble family name, but they were pretty much broke. So he first went into the military, made a name for himself as this brave, brilliant strategist. Then he comes back to Rome and turns out to be this incredible public speaker who the people just loved.
But he was smart. He knew he couldn't do it all by himself. So he teamed up with this guy, Pompey, who was like the most famous general in Rome at the time. So you have Caesar, who's got the people on his side, and Pompey, who has all the military fame.
But there was one missing piece, the money. And that came from a man named Crassus, who was the richest guy in Rome, hands down. So you've got Caesar's popularity, Pompey's army, and Crassus' cash. This team-up, called the First Triumvirate, pretty much ran Rome without even needing the Senate.
Now, you can probably guess that sharing power wasn't really Caesar's long-term goal. He gets himself appointed governor of Gaul, this wild, unconquered territory, so he can go build his own personal army and become a legend in his own right. And for eight long, brutal years, that's exactly what he did. He fought in Gaul, conquered huge amounts of land, suffered through miserable winters, and he was right there in the thick of it with his men. And because of that, his soldiers were fiercely, unshakably loyal to him. Meanwhile, back in Rome, the Senate is starting to get really nervous. I mean, they're terrified. This guy has power, he's famous, and he has a private army that loves him. It's way too much. So they send him an order, an ultimatum really. And the message was basically this: they wanted him stripped of his power, totally vulnerable, so they could arrest him or worse.
So there he is, standing on the bank of this little river called the Rubicon, with the biggest choice of his life. Does he obey the law, which almost certainly means his own death, or does he break the law and plunge the entire Roman world into a civil war?
And with those three famous words, he made his choice. He led his army across the river. And that was it. There was absolutely no turning back.
What happened next was a fast, brutal civil war, and Caesar won. When he finally marched back into Rome, he wasn't just a general anymore. He was the undisputed master of it all.
And once he was in charge, boy did he move fast. He crushed all his rivals, he famously met and allied with Queen Cleopatra in Egypt, and he got himself named dictator for life. He started making all these popular changes too, like reforming the calendar, which is pretty much the one we still use, and giving land to his loyal soldiers. But for the old school senators, all of this looked way too much like he was trying to be a king. And you have to remember, Rome hated kings. The whole republic was built on getting rid of them. Now it looked like a new one was rising right in front of them.
So these senators felt like they had only one option left if they wanted to, quote, save the republic. A secret plot started to form, one that aimed right at the heart of Caesar himself.
It all came to a head on March 15th, 44 BC.
a day that would go down in history as the Ides of March. Caesar was actually warned not to go to the Senate that day. His own wife pleaded with him to stay home. He ignored every warning.
When he got to the Senate, he was surrounded by the conspirators, and among them was Marcus Brutus, a man Caesar had mentored, a man he'd treated like his own son. The betrayal was just absolute.
The attack was sudden, it was vicious, and it was personal. He was stabbed 23 times.
He died right there on the Senate floor, bleeding out at the base of a statue of his old rival, Pompey.
You know, the craziest thing is, the men who did it thought they were heroes. In their minds, they were saving the Republic. They thought if they killed the man, they could kill the ambition for a crown and bring back the old Rome.
But is that what actually happens? Did they save the Republic they claimed to love?
Not even close. His murder just kicked off another round of horrible civil wars. And when all the fighting was finally over, who was left standing? His adopted son, Octavian. He took total power and became Augustus, the very first emperor of Rome. The Republic was officially dead.
And Caesar's legacy? It was so huge that his name, Caesar, literally became the word for emperor. You see it pop up for centuries as Kaiser in Germany and Tsar in Russia. That's how big his shadow was.
So that brings us to the big, lingering question. Who was Julius Caesar really? Was he a hero who brought order to a chaotic world and looked out for the common person? Or was he a power-hungry tyrant whose ambitions single-handedly destroyed one of the greatest republics in history? Something to think about, isn't it?